Welcome to the podcast, Jay.
Michelle, thank you so much for having me. I'm always honored and humbled and privileged to be doing podcasts with people. I made a goal in December of 2025 to do 75 podcasts this year. Nice. And you are number 10. So thank you so much for having me.
That's a good number.
Yep.
Awesome. So tell me, I always like to start with an origin story so that my audience can get to hear your background. And I, for one, I'm very interested in what I've read thus far. So I'm excited to have you share your story.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to give you the 100,000 foot summary.
Okay.
I'm an ex-college athlete, played basketball, was still playing competitive basketball at the age of 29 in a men's league in Southern California. I got kicked in the testicles. Checked out, but about 7 to 8 weeks later, I started feeling really run down. I felt broken. I had low back pain, just didn't feel right. Knew something was off. I went to my HMO/PPO doctor. At the time, I worked for the Los Angeles Times. And as I like to say, there's no coincidences, only synchronicities. He recommended me to a world-class Harvard-educated endocrinologist by the name of Dr. Raymond Scruggs. And he took my labs and saw that I had the testosterone levels of a geriatric, like an 85-year-old man. So he said, look, I can put you on therapeutic testosterone. And 8 weeks to 9 weeks later, you'll be right as rain. And if you want to come off, you can. So he's like, before you say yes, go home, talk to your, at the time, it was my wife-to-be. And I always say, shout out to Kelly because she is long gone. But, we did not have kids. And we were like, yeah, we're both smart people. We could do this. So I went on therapeutic testosterone. And again, I was literally 7 weeks shy of turning 30, and everything he said was going to happen happened. And when I went to see him at my 8-week checkup, he was like, okay, I'm going to take you off. And I'm like, you're not taking me off this. This is the most transformative, amazing I've ever felt in my life. I want to learn more about this. And so from that point forward, the next 10 to 12 years, I became this amazingly voracious student of hormones and also other things, which again, this was in the early 2000s, which happened to be therapeutic peptides. I tell people this and they freak out, but like I've been using therapeutic peptides since 2003, right? So like all this time that I was using therapeutic hormones, therapeutic peptides, and other things, experimenting on myself, I was like, I call myself an OG biohacker, guinea pig. I learned about all these amazing, call them adjuvants or molecules or, biochemical miracles. So fast forward, I built a really awesome physique using therapeutic hormones, using therapeutic peptides. People would always ask me, how do you look the way you do? And I would always tell them straight to their face, I use therapeutic testosterone and peptides, et cetera. And so I would be met with this like look of derision. Oh my God, you're on steroids. Or it would be like, wow, fascinating. Tell me more. And so eventually the fascinating tell me more people won out. And I wrote a book, which was published in 2015. It was actually written in 2014. And it became a very, very big top-selling book on Amazon and was number one in Men's Health for like 5 or 6 months in 2016. And then from there, it just kind of vaulted me to speaking on stages, talking about hormones. I wrote my book on peptides in 2023, and it exploded into mainstream consciousness. For one really apparent reason, I didn't know it at the time, but it was because it was in the middle of the vaccines, the scamdemic and the COVID vaccine and all that. And so people were looking for alternative forms of healing. And obviously peptides represented, that. And so my book really blew up. And then, subsequently then I've launched and sold a company. And now I have another company called BioLongevity Labs. And I'm just in the right place at the right time. At the same time that I learned about all of that stuff and I was really walking the path of hormones and peptides and stuff, I really got really conscious. And that's kind of really my jam now. I talk about consciousness. I talk about, people raising their frequency, raising their vibration. And so on top of being like this health optimization expert, I also talk about conscious frequency and the universe and all that kind of stuff. And I think everybody really starts talking about that once you get to a level where you really have really clear awareness. And so many people don't, right? Because they're walking around and insulin dysregulated, inflamed, metabolically deranged. All these different horrible things are happening because our society is so broken. But when you are clear physiologically, it's allowing, I think, the universe to kind of clear you up consciously too. And so like, I've really become this person that, it's great that I understand hormones and peptides and fertility and all these things, but I really like to talk about consciousness because I always say now that like, if we don't raise our frequency collectively as a species, we're going to blow ourselves up. And we've done it so many times in the past that you can really start projecting that we might do it again. And so my mission now is to A, end obesity, and B, teach people that their thoughts create their reality. So that's kind of like where I'm at now.
Yeah, it's right up my alley, actually.
Awesome.
I'm a huge Dr. Joe Dispenza fan.
Awesome.
Groupie, you can call me. I've got already
Awesome.
multiple week-long retreats, and when you go there and you experience really the collective, that's where it's at. I mean, when you start to be in the collective soup of that similar and trained intention and consciousness, that's where you can actually say, okay, now I'm experiencing it. It's more than just a theory, it's a felt experience. And when you experience that, I don't think you ever really go back. And I
I
always
agree.
say that, yes, you can go into, the supplements, the diet, all the physical things, which matter 100%. But if you completely bypass the mind and your state of being, really, then, and if there's some blocks in that category, then it doesn't matter what you do or how healthy of a lifestyle you have, because you really need to address it. Because actually, that is sort of that's the foundation. That's where everything manifests from.
Exactly. I mean, look, I'm so awesome that you and I are talking, and this is the universe lighting us up, right? Because you
Yeah,
thought I was just some peptide dork. But the truth is that we aren't anything but vibrating atoms and oscillating waves of energy.
true.
And the energy is infinite. And the only thing that limits us in this physical avatar body in this current state of reality is our thoughts. And so it's as simple as a Jedi mind trick. As you notice, of course, I have Yoda back here. It's as simple as changing your thought processes to be open-minded, sovereign, empowered, and free consciously versus being closed-minded, which is limited and vibrating down here in the red root chakra because you're in fear, right? So
Hmm.
every single day, no matter how shitty you envision, or, again, that's lacking and limiting by just saying that, but like,
Hmm.
no matter how bad you find yourself or how bad you feel, you can change like that. And that's the
Yeah,
beauty of living in third density reality, because again, we can choose to serve others and be, conscious and empowered, or we can choose to serve self and live as a victim, and nobody can say otherwise. And as you know, our
yeah,
society is so broken, it constantly pushes victimhood. It
yeah.
constantly
It's true.
pushes my younger daughters to think that it's not their responsibility, that they're not, accountable for all of their actions. And it's insane because, like, you see it, I see it. We have to really teach, the younger generations that, like, no, you are in complete control of your vibration, and that's it. But that vibration is going to ultimately give you the gateway to a better life.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. And so we'll go into that for sure. I want to talk about therapeutic peptides because
Sure.
I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this and they're like, "What are therapeutic peptides?
Yep.
How is it going to impact my body? And
Yep.
like, how do I administer it?"
Yep. So peptides are basically in the lowest common denominator of breaking them down. They're basically biomolecules that are created organically in our cells. And they're, from a scientific standpoint that people can understand, they're basically chains of amino acids.
Hmm.
And the
Which make up
shorter the
proteins.
chain, yeah, the shorter the chain, the more likely you can ingest it orally. The
Hmm.
longer the chain, the more like you have to inject it with a insulin syringe, because again, a peptide is an aqueous based solution. So most peptides are synthesized in a lab, but they are naturally occurring. I think most people probably on this show or your audience knows what BPC 157 is or has heard of it because they have friends that are using it. And it's basically known as body protective compound, and it's actually secreted in the digestive juices in the gut. So to use it, though, obviously it has to be synthesized in a lab. But again, it's a naturally occurring biomolecule. So again, when you inject it, the synthesized form, you're basically injecting something that is already naturally found in the body. It's an organic peptide chain signaling molecule. So the risks of using them are very, very low. In fact, I tell people this all the time. In the 24 years now that I've been using therapeutic peptides, I've never seen a person OD. I've
Hmm.
never seen a person have any kind of horrifying, have to be hospitalized effect. Now, the exception to that rule would be the idiots and I'm sure we'll get into this on this podcast, that take super high doses of GLP peptides, attempting to not eat for weeks at a time because they think that that's actually an intelligent strategy to
Mhm.
lose weight, right? So, but even those people don't die. They just, screw up their colon and, screw up their digestive tract. And obviously there's all sorts of other negative things that happen because they can have micronutrient and mineral deficiencies, protein deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies because they haven't eaten for 2 or 3 weeks. But
Yeah.
other than that, there's very, very low risk and very, very high potential reward if you understand how to use them correctly.
Got it. So what are the different types of peptide and specifically for fertility? Because you've talked about actually male fertility, that you've helped a lot of men, which
Yes.
is an important topic that is not addressed as frequently. And I have to admit, I need to be starting to talk about it more on my podcast.
So right now we are at the lowest birth rate in history. Fertility is the worst problem that it's ever been in the first world. Now, why is that? Well, we live in a contaminated first world. People mostly consume engineered food, GMO food. There's endocrine disrupting chemicals in the water supply. There's phthalates, there's phytoestrogens, BPA. I mean, I could go on there. So, I mean, like people young of let's just call it childbearing years, which is probably really realistically 25 to 40. I know there's lots of men and women having babies in their early and mid 40s now because of in vitro fertilization, et cetera. But we were designed, from the 25 to 40 time to really, especially women, to get the womb, is ready and et cetera. But because the environment is so contaminated, because men have such low levels of FSH and LH, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, they have such low levels of circulating actual spermatozoa. And then the same thing is happening with women, right? Hormonal pathways and patterning. So you've got that. And when you put them both together, you have the lowest birth rate that we've ever seen, right? Now, you don't see this in the first, or I should say third and fourth worlds, because in the third and fourth worlds, they don't have the endocrine or the disruption, from just call it modernization, right? Modernized living, the chemicals in the environment, the EMF, all the things that are in the first world that contribute, you don't see in the second and third, fourth world as much. I mean, it's starting to affect them, but it's still not as bad. So you're going to see a higher birth rate like in Latin America than you will in the United States. But again, it's all due to the chemicals and the modernization. But there are definite ways that you can utilize, various peptides like kisspeptin, like HMG, like HCG. I mean, there's various other ones, testogen. There's tons of now Russian bioregulators like endolutin that you can take that improve male and female endocrine systems. So there's just a lot of really good, advantageous, you could call them natural means where you can stimulate people's endocrine systems and obviously ultimately their fertility. But you really have to understand how to use them. And I think I really should say this. I've never really said this on a podcast before, but the biggest issue that we have preventing men and women from getting pregnant is inflammation due to visceral fat. Because I've seen, and I'm a studies dork. So when I see the studies and I see the lack of the birth rate falling, I also see the increase in body fat, right? Like over the age of 40 now, the average adult in America, this is in the United States alone, the average adult over the age of 40 is clinically obese by the BMI, right? So that's like, I think I saw a stat, this was in 2024, or most recent was 2024, that 63% of men and women over the age of 40 in the United States identify as obese, according to the BMI. Now, obviously, there's some statistically variation because sometimes muscular people show as obese in the BMI. And that's also because the top end of the range is affecting or varying. How do I say that? The variation is due to obesity. Mm-hmm. So they're classifying most people based on the average person being obese. So it's a horrible situation. So obviously, if you factor that in and you really drill down, you're going to see that if people lose body fat and improve their level of leanness, that naturally their birth rates will go up. But again, that's not what we are. That's not Western society anymore. The average person walking around is clinically obese by the BMI. But if you do take those peptides, you use, some of them are really not peptides. They're kind of small molecules. but you can improve birth rate and also the short time or lessen the time it takes someone to get pregnant.
And are there ways, because you talk about longevity, like does it help with the quality of eggs? Does it help with mitochondria? Um,
100%.
yeah. So what are some of the ways that it can do that?
So, I mean, I guess it just really depends on what you're using peptides for, right? I mean,
Hmm.
there's right now 56 or 57, maybe 58 peptides that are commercially available that people know about, but there's thousands of peptides that are not commercially available that we have identified in science that we could eventually utilize. There's peptides that can actually attack cancers. They can kill ontological tumors. There's just so many different, call it uses or use cases for peptides, but we don't have them yet commercially available. But in the ones that we do, you kind of have to classify them as like, what do they do, right? Well, the 5 biggest needle movers are like cognition, fat loss, longevity or wellness. You've got immunity and healing, right? So those are kind of the biggest 5 classifications. And I always tell people, because, some people, they get into peptides and they have the shiny object syndrome going on because they're like, oh my God, I want to use all these peptides for all these different things. And it's like, you can't really look at your biological system functioning as like taking them all at once or stacking them all at once. It's like, what is the bleeding neck issue that you as an individual has? And for most people, they've got insulin resistance or inflammation due to high levels of visceral body fat, which obviously creates the inflammation. So you probably want to use some peptides to reduce or to help you with body fat. That would be like GLP peptides, GLP-2, GLP-3. There's obviously lots of stuff in
What
the
are the difference
pipeline.
between the different GLPs?
Yeah, so like a GLP-1 peptide is like the old school semaglutide, or which is known as Wegovy
Hmm.
in the mainstream. And honestly, I just wrote a book. It's not published yet. It comes out in February, mid-February, February 24th. It's called Metabolic Awakening with GLP-1 Peptides. And I go through all of these various GLP peptides. I explain what they do. But most importantly, I explain how to use them correctly in the context of health and longevity and how to avoid the unmitigated disaster of the mainstream who uses
Hmm.
them, with pharma instructions, and they obviously take too high of a dose and then they whack out the
Because I
receptors and
know
then
that
they.
in some cases, my reservation is that there are cases where it can cause irreparable harm on the digestive system.
So,
Is
so
it too
all,
high
so
of an
So I
amount?
can tell you this as someone intimately familiar with the data on GLPs, and that will be proven when this book comes out. I mean, there's 1,300 scientific references in it and 717 pages. And I used it with no AI, just me and 2 copywriters, of 6 months of research. All side effects with GLPs can be avoided. The person that takes a GLP has to obviously live a correct lifestyle and has to use them in a microdose fashion. But
Hmm.
95% of people using GLPs do not do that.
Okay,
So they
so
take it too
microdose
high of a
versus
dose.
full
Yes.
dose,
They
which
take
is
way
what
too high of a
generically.
dose. They blow out their receptors, and then none of them live the lifestyle that is A, necessary, and B, conducive to
Hmm.
optimizing their health, right? So think about it like this. And again, this is all covered in the book. I
Hmm.
cover every single side effect ever listed on a GLP. I have literally chapter 3 is I think it's 98 pages, and I dropped 50 pages out of it, but it's so exhaustive going through every single side effect and explaining why this happens and how to avoid it. But every single thing that people experience negatively from taking GLPs are due to starting too high of a dose and then, of course, titrating higher.
Hmm.
And then B, like I said, not doing any of the lifestyle requirements. And the lifestyle requirements are very, very critical. And I'll just tell you, there's like 10 of them, but I'll for this podcast, we'll just talk 4. The most important. Number 1 is, are you eating enough protein
Hmm.
to avoid catabolism, AKA muscle loss? And
Hmm.
99% of people that use GLPs do not do that.
Hmm.
Number 2 is, are you doing resistance training to strengthen the bones and to avoid catabolism of muscle, right? Because if you do that while you're using these, you will not have muscle loss. So that's number 2. And then, 3 and 4 are you hormonally balanced or hormonally optimized, which, as you know, 80% of society is not. So that's also the fast path to losing muscle, because again, this is a simple thing, thermodynamics. If you lose muscle, you ultimately are going to shut down your metabolism or lower your metabolic rate, because obviously you have to maintain muscle when you're losing body fat in order to keep everything running, thyroid, energy metabolism, all the different things that happen when you have muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So when you lose it, it breaks everything else down. And then I would just say, number 4 is, like everything else, is just good sleep hygiene and stuff like that. But many, many people, I know this is insane to think about this, but they will take a very high dose of a peptide and think that if I don't eat for 2 weeks, I'm going to lose all the weight. It's insane.
Yeah.
But again, the American public has not really been taught about nutrition at any level of education. College degree doctors don't learn about nutrition.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it's more than just the public.
Exactly. So that, and then, when you really factor that in and you look at what is happening, they go to these doctors who don't understand how to give them proper instructions on lifestyle habits. And the doctor makes the most amount of money by prescribing the highest amount of dose. And then they stair step the dose. And so literally every 10 days to 2 weeks, the dose is doubling. And if it's not doubling, it's going from 1 to 1.5.
Yeah.
Right. So it's insane what happens. And again, like I said, 95% of people that experience GLPs have done it wrong and then go into their, wherever it is that they scream into the ether and say, these are the worst things ever. And then celebrity doctors glom on, celebrity influencers glom on.
Yeah, it's important to also know your body type, because in some cases,
Yes.
if you have like really bad insulin resistance and it's very difficult for your body to get on track, sometimes it does require something a little stronger.
Yeah, no, 100%. Look,
Yeah.
insulin resistance is lifestyle.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to change your lifestyle, you can't use a GLP. And obviously I talk about a lot of this in, the book. And that's why I really am, it's a labor of love for me, because my mom was obese and my mom died of COVID, but I mean, she was really struggling with obesity and being comorbid her majority of her adult life. She did give birth to 9 children,
Oh, wow.
but she was obese and she died of COVID. And, I really wanted to help her. And so for 30 years of my life, I attempted to, not physically. I was probably 2 or 3 years of intervening with her when she was younger and I was younger. But then I became conscious and I realized that,
It's her
the
path.
teacher appears when the student is ready, and
Yeah.
you can't wave your arms, as you know. So,
True. Yeah.
but at the end, I was very humbled and I was also just sad, to watch my mom deteriorate in the way she did. And so I was like, you know what, if there's any person with the knowledge to cure obesity or to tackle obesity head on, it's going to be me. And so I eventually wrote this book. And again, I'm really proud of it. It's going to come out in the end of February, around the 24th. But it's really powerful book. And if we can get it into the hands of enough people, we can definitely teach people how to not be insulin resistant, metabolically deranged, and ultimately obese, because I do teach people how to do this right. And I have, like I said, tons of studies that back me up, but then I also have a chapter on transformations. And I have 16 people, men and women equally, from all over the world, all walks of life, who, have incredible before and afters, but most importantly, talk in their own words about what the GLP did for them and, how it changed everything for them and completely transformed their life and, spiritually made them more aware and awakened and et cetera. So it's like, I tell people, like, it's just a tool.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's just a tool, but like all tools, we have to know how to use them, in the context of health and longevity. And most people don't, as you already said. And most doctors and of course pharma don't give a rat's ass because they just want to make money. They're not really in it for health. I'm sure there's some doctors that are and lack the education or lack the actual knowledge base to really truly help people. But there's enough smart people out there talking about microdosing and doing it correctly and interpreting the research that it shouldn't be as bad as it still is. And so I'm really hopeful that this book is going to shine a really bright light on what I would call a dark hallway so far when it comes to GLPs.
Oh yeah, it was very dark because I'll be honest, I had a lot of resistance to GLP-1s,
Yeah.
like a lot when it first came out, and just seeing how people just took it, and even friends of mine, people I know, and I was like, well, you got to really do the research before you start this because it's not like just some kind of simple thing. Like I know that there are certain problems with stomach paralysis, and some of them are like irreversible, and so then so I was kind of, I initially had a very strong like resistance, other ways to lose weight. But then I realized, that it's not a black and white thing, and that in some cases it was really helping people that no matter what they did, they were not losing weight, and their insulin resistance was very stubborn. It was really difficult for them to do anything like exercise. Sometimes made them, because they're so drained physically, like it
Of
wasn't really
course.
helping.
Exactly.
Then I started hearing about microdosing, and I was like, okay, well, this might be a little bit of a more compromised level, where you're not bombarding the body with something into their system. And I just think that there were so many unknowns, and it became so like it went like wildfire, like everybody was using it, and there were too many unknowns. So that was my hesitation originally. But I'm still learning, as a practitioner, I'm still learning, but it feels like the microdosing is less, I guess, invasive than, those really high doses.
So I actually, have. So I'm going to read this to you. So there's a lot you just said there. There's a lot to unpack. Obesity is not a lack of willpower, and it's a very, how do I say it? It's a very nuanced and multi-pronged issue,
Mm-hmm.
and it's honestly it's probably threefold. And I have so many windows. I was just going to read to you this summary that somebody just wrote in my book, but I can't find it now. But I know what obesity is caused by. Obesity is caused by, number one, the addiction to the hyper palatability of foods. Now, to explain that for the average listener on your audience, there are people that get paid millions, the M word, dollars a year to create molecules that addict people's brainwave patternings to the food. And this is
Mm-hmm.
obviously in the fast food industry and the GMO boxed food stuff industry. And so these people, the majority of them are the obese, insulin resistant people, are not able to overcome the addiction from these chemicals. So it's really, really horrible. I mean, I explain this and go into detail and depth in the book. And then the number two reason is due to that addiction, they're obese, they're insulin resistant, they can't move, they have pain. People have to understand this, and there's not a lot of people out there saying this, but people who are obese are in a default state of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is that you have cytokine storms in your body 24/7. So we have no idea as non-obese people what they are feeling. And so it's very, very difficult for them to exercise, to think clearly, because you got to understand when you're metabolically inflamed, you're mentally inflamed. So everything is affected negatively. And then the number third thing is obviously the result of one and two, which is they don't have the energy to do the things that we all say that they can do, right? Or they
And
don't have the
sometimes they
willpower.
do. Sometimes they don't necessarily have energy, but I see my patients when they come to me. I mean,
Yeah,
we work on many different ways,
sure.
like
Yep.
of trying to help through supplements,
Of
sometimes
course.
herbals. So there are definitely like ways around it, but they really do. They exercise like crazy. They don't eat a lot. Like they give me a whole list of what they eat, and they still can't shed the weight, and
Yeah.
it's frustrating,
Yeah. Well, I mean, again,
especially with PCOS, insulin resistant PCOS.
yeah.
Really difficult.
It's a multi-causal thing, but those three things that I told you are what creates it. And then
Yeah.
once it happens, it's very difficult to lose it because they are metabolically resistant.
Hmm.
It is very hard to get off. I mean, look, if you live in the Midwest, where you are being bombarded by atrazine and glyphosate at all
Hmm.
times, those chemicals sit in your fat tissue
Hmm.
and are actually very difficult to metabolize.
Right, because then your body's protecting itself from like getting too many toxins all at once, and our
I mean,
fat cells
you're
love to
loaded with
store them.
toxins.
Yeah.
That's the reason you have all that fat, because the fat is the protection from the toxins.
Yeah.
So it's a
It's a
multifactorial
yeah, for
situation.
sure. Another
It's
thing is you can go to Europe where they don't have as many chemicals and eat
Mexico's the same way.
pasta and
Yep.
like I mean, carbs galore and lose weight.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's
You
absolutely
know?
true.
So
It's the same
something
thing in
in the
Mexico.
American food, and I think that it's beyond just like the addiction, it's
Yep.
beyond the taste. Because you can eat
Yep.
the same amount. It's the chemicals that they put in, whatever it is in them, they process it. I think the best way to
Exactly.
maybe control it is to, I don't know, grow your own food if you can, or like do something
Well,
where,
you have to order. There are companies out there that sell very organic, sustainable meals, and you have to obviously have
yeah,
money to get that. I mean, that's what
yeah,
my wife and I eat. I mean, look, I travel the world a lot.
yeah.
I can't eat American food. I can't go to a restaurant in America and order anything. I took my daughter out to dinner for her 18th birthday on Sunday night, and we went to a teppanyaki steakhouse here in Tampa, a very famous one. I couldn't eat it. They put so much chemical, like you said, processed chemicals, additives, whatever, flavoring. It's insane. I just come back from 2 weeks in Mexico where I ate out every night at either a steak, a Thai, different Brazilian, Ecuadorian, like just flavors of the world. And the food is succulent, amazing. There's no
Yeah, it tastes
chemicals.
delicious and you lose weight.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
so we are under assault in America. And it really does now take a very conscious being who's super proactive to avoid it. I mean,
Hmm.
there's a reason I told my wife and I, we don't go out to eat. There's nothing to do. I drink a lot of really, really good protein shakes. I get the 3-ingredient almond milk. I drink water
Like
and three
simple,
ingredient
like
almond milk.
back
That's
to the
it. Right.
basics, you know? I
You
think that
can't,
that's the way
you
you can.
literally cannot
Yeah.
eat packaged food or go to restaurants that are layering all this crap on the food. You will literally be sick. Or if you're not sick, it's what you and I already talked about. You're, metabolically resistant, insulin
Hmm.
resistant, and probably having too much body fat.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think about it as more than obviously like what you're intaking, but also like the way your body's using energy. We're able to access energy. It's almost like there's a block to our body's ability to access our own energy, which is
Yep.
what keeps it into
Dude,
storage. Like
100%. I mean, America is the most metabolically dysregulated nation on earth. That's
that's
100%
scary.
fact. And it really is, everything is broken down, obviously, since COVID. That's a whole nother thing. A lot of people broke psychologically and have given up. But if you don't, well, let's just say this. This is a statistical fact. The leaner you are, the longer you will live, right? If you look at all the blue zone people and the octogenarian people, I mean, you could get into a debate of quantity versus quality, but most of those people are, Asians, and they're very lean. They're tiny people. They live into their 100, they get into 108, 109, 110. The people are even in the one teens. But all of those people have zero inflammation. They have no body fat. So if you want to extend your life, and obviously you can't account for a plane crash or getting hit by a car, any of that stuff. But if you want to extend your life, you want to lower your level of body fat, because again, body fat is what creates inflammation. Inflammation is what creates cellular degradation, which leads to disease. Every single disease state that we know of is coming from inflammation.
Mhm.
Heart attack, inflammation. Uh, type 3 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, inflammation, insulin resistance, right? And so it's like, if we understand that and we lower our body fat, as much as we possibly can as we age, then statistically we will live longer. It just obviously becomes, as you know, especially doing the work that you do, that if you have all these other issues of resistance, it's much harder to lose the weight. And so that's why I say that if you understand how to use a GLP-2 or use a
Mhm.
GLP-3, and of course I explain that in the book,
Mhm.
it is a good tool to help people who otherwise lack tools or struggle to lose weight. And by the way, just so you know, I think the GLP-1 is a completely worthless drug. And
Mhm.
I talk about that in the book. It was a useful tool when it had utility in the marketplace, but it's been passed up. And I also say now that, like, this book, in 2 years, the stuff that I recommend now, I may say that is also useless and is now completely obsolete because of what's in the pipeline. And that's, to me, that's what's really cool about the industry, is that we are in a biomedical golden age. But in order for you as a call it a conscious consumer, You have to, like you said already, you have to do the work. You have to do your own research. You have to listen to intelligent people who can explain this stuff to you. But the tools are accessible and available. You just have to learn how to do them. And I think you also know this too. The signal to noise ratio, especially on the internet, is mostly noise and very little signal. So it also becomes harder for people who listen to, fake influencers or people that act like they know what they're talking about. I mean, I always tell people this, and we haven't said this on this call, 90 to 95, it's probably somewhere in the middle of that, 92, 93% of people online that talk about peptides have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Literally no idea. They're making things up. I mean, I've been using them for 24 years. There's very few people that understand it at the level that I understand it. And that includes doctors, researchers. And I hear people talking about these and I'm like, that person just made that up. But the average person who doesn't know this doesn't understand that, right? So they're constantly being led down paths that aren't true, and don't get me going about AI, because AI is literally hallucinating data feed.
Yeah, I know.
Do you know that you're the only person I've ever shared this with on a podcast? As I told you, the book has zero AI, no AI summaries, no AI conclusions, no AI adaption. There was at one point in the Google document where I was like, you know what, this book is amazing. Let me just see. And my copywriter was like, I will resign if you do it. We don't care.
Yeah.
But I have done this. And by the way, my name is very big in AI because of my research and my work. I have asked AI in the last 3 weeks, and I don't use AI in anything to do, but I did this as a game, 6 different questions about 6 different peptides. And they were all the same questions, but asked in a different way. And every single answer was different and wrong.
Somebody told me,
imagine the youth who are not, as savvy as you and I are, have been around longer, who are being influenced by AI. I think of my daughters, they're 16 and 18 years old. And they think that AI is God. They think that AI is the answer. It's insane. I mean, literally they are learning nothing.
It's a tool. You could use it for some things, but you really need to be leading that ship. You can't allow it to be the captain.
You can't use it to think.
Yeah.
And a lot of young people do use it to think.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem because they're outsourcing their discernment and their conscious communication. They're outsourcing their brain power. Yeah. It's lowering IQ. That's not debatable.
Well, I think our phones already started that.
Well, of course, but think about it. If you're 15 years old now and you ask AI for the answer, you're not thinking.
Yeah.
And that's what all these kids do. I mean, I talk to people that are, old friends of mine that are now working as professors in college and stuff like that. And they tell me stories that I can't comprehend it. I mean, imagine if your whole job was trying to determine like what papers that were submitted were written by AI and what wasn't.
Well, I mean, I think there's ways to do that. You can submit it.
They all know it. Now, but I mean, imagine if that was your job.
But you know what? I remember growing up having to remember like people's phone numbers. Like my brain used to actually work, and I fight it. I fight it now. Like I try to almost catch myself, and I still try to, write things down and do things that I used to do. Where
I still
technology.
Write everything down.
It's so much better. And because there was a time where I was typing because I type fast. So I always type. And then I said, wait, I need to like my handwriting. I need to use my hand to write more.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. It's a weird day and age that we're in. You're right. It's a tool, just like peptides are tools, GLPs are tools, hormones are tools.
Right.
But I do think that far too many people, especially going back to the signal to noise ratio, with it mostly being noise, people think of these tools as answers or as fundamental agents, and they're not.
Yeah.
They're just a tool, as you said, very accurately.
We undermine ourselves. I think that we don't realize how powerful we are, which is why we're always seeking outside of us. And the ancients have always told us, you want the answers, go within.
It's
always been savior. Go within.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think that's, it feels easier to go without, but you're not, it's going to be a fake illusion. You're not getting the real thing.
Exactly. We see very eye to eye. Exactly. I mean, it's an interesting time because Thankfully, there are a lot of people like us now. I mean, I don't know how many of them are like us, but I mean, I think there's a lot more than there was, say, 5 years ago. But there's not enough of us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like David Icke just wrote this amazing book called The Roadmap. I highly recommend you get it and read it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he talks about Joe Dispenza in the book, but it's an amazing book because he teaches you, not that he always hasn't been teaching you, and there are of course other people teaching you, and you and I already know this, but literally everything is a perception deception.
Mm-hmm.
And when you change your view to be open-minded, you are connected to infinity. And when
Mm-hmm.
you are closed-minded, you are connected to basically whatever lack and limitation mindset or scarcity mindset that you have. So it's like you can either be open-minded and open to everything and the abundance and the prosperity that the universe can provide, or you can be closed-minded and closed off. It's as simple as that. I mean, I know that that sounds overly simplistic, but it's not. And I feel like that's a great way to teach people who are starting to really start walking the path that you and I have been walking for a long time. Because if they could just change their viewpoint from being limiting to being open and expansive, everything changes.
Well, I feel in the sense of, I guess all the data points that people get when they're on the fertility journey, or the messages that they get from their doctors, like, well, you're getting old, and all,
Right.
all the things that were figured out thus far. And I
Yeah.
often say this, and hopefully people have heard me say this a couple of times so that it really kind of gets in their minds. But the two things that I always say is, if you look up the oldest person that conceived and had a baby naturally, was this woman named Dawn Brooks in England. And she was 59 when she had her. She got
That's
pregnant at
awesome.
58, had the baby at 59, healthy baby, good birth. And I think to myself, okay, and then I kind of, I always couple this with the Roger Bannister effect
Sure.
of, oh, it's impossible to
A
beat the
4 minute
4 minute
mile.
mile.
Yeah.
And then he goes ahead and, like, after years and years and years of being told that it's physically impossible, beats it. And then within a month or two, like, multiple people beat it. How is it that all of
Exactly.
a sudden that opened the door? It's a mindset
Exactly.
that it's possible. And I think that what happens is, again, we put so much of our belief in other people and what they say that we allow that to seep into our consciousness, and we don't, without even realizing we're putting limitations. And I think, I will say, I think that one of the things that I'll attribute to a lot of my success, and I'm not saying this in any kind of conceited way or anything like
Sure.
that. I
Sure.
really feel very dedicated to this work of helping couples conceive and have families. And I think the biggest thing that I can attribute it to is that I believe in them. I believe that they can do it.
Exactly.
And I think as a practitioner, when you believe in them, subconsciously, they don't realize, but it gives them permission to believe in themselves. It's unfortunate that they need me or anybody else to have that. But I guess we're not islands. We do need people. We need that support. But I think that it's important, really, to, when you're talking about that expansiveness, that open-mindedness, to go beyond the limitations of what we've been given, go beyond the
Yes.
limitations of what has been studied thus far.
Right. Right.
It's just been studied thus far. That
Right.
doesn't mean that there's not other possibilities out there. And I think that we get so limited, and science gets limited, and then we look like crazy people talking about things that haven't yet happened. You know what I'm saying? And I think that there's many like us that are probably afraid to speak because they're like, oh, well, if I speak about this stuff, I'll seem too woo, or, and that's literally what happens. It's because you're not limiting yourself to everything that's already been discovered.
Exactly. So if you understand everything you just said, can be summed up very simply that if you understand the quantum, all is possible and all is probable.
Mm-hmm.
So when you understand it at that level, there is no limitation.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the mind is the prison of human consciousness because, again, you just said it, right? Like if we are afraid, I mean, fear is the ultimate saboteur, but if we are afraid, or if we think that others may judge us or label us or, say, like you said, woo, then you're instantly in that lack, again, limitation, scarcity, mindset, and you're not open to expansion, which is obviously abundance, prosperity, et cetera. So you just have to play the game at a level of like, hey, okay, all is possible. Not only is all is possible, but I'm going to allow that awareness into my conscious frequency in everything that I do, because I know that the opposite will limit me. It's as simple as that. But I mean, I agree with everything you said, and I know it's actually true. And that's why I always say it's like, it's as simple as just changing your perception that you are an infinite being and that you're not identifying, as you were saying, as this. You know, I'm a white male, or I'm this religion, I'm this, you know, et cetera. And you just have this kind of like, I'm open and allowing to all again, the quantum, all is possible. And so I don't have any limitations. I don't have any self identities of this, that, or everything. And because you said it best, like we usually are taught from an early age at birth to self identify with limitation. In everything, there's a limitation. You know, I'm this, you know, how many people have come to you and they're like, oh, but you know, diabetes runs in my family, or autoimmune runs in my family, or, you know, they've heard this insane diagnosis given them to another person.
And there was a time where
true. How was it?
They used to believe that there was no neuroplasticity until they discovered that there was. So in the perception, I mean, like in the matrix.
Yeah, no. I got you. I understand what you're saying, but yeah. So I mean,
so
but
there
that's
was a time where
that in and of itself proves that you're limiting in your thought process. Look, all the great accomplished people of society going back thousands of years did not have a lack, scarcity, or limitation mindset. It's as simple as that. You could not create. I could actually make an argument. I can't prove it, but I can make an argument that the more open your mind is to expansion, the more likely you are to be communicated with by higher density or higher dimensional sources. Because I truly think that even like Joseph Dispenza, like people like that, like they're so deep into the connection with the universe that they get wisdom or information or insights imparted into them. You know, you could probably call it telepathically, or just consciously, because of the work they're doing. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really what happens. I think that all great advancements come from people that do not have that limiting mindset or that limiting belief. And so now it's kind of like seeping. I mean, however you define it, it seeps into their consciousness, and then they're like, boom, I got this great idea.
So here's what I'm going to say, very much in line with that. My belief in doing this for 10 years is that people who feel deep in their gut or in their soul or viscerally that they want to conceive, I don't think that's random. I don't think that feeling is a random thing. I don't think that it's isolated. I don't think it's just a desire. I think it's actually a calling. And I think that if you have that calling, and I think that this kind of comes down to like not really realizing how powerful you are. If you have that calling, that is your intuition, that is your higher self, that is your intelligence telling you it's possible.
That's awesome.
That's my belief.
That's not a belief. That's a knowing. I would tell you.
That's another level.
Actually tell you to change your conscious word languaging and stop using the word belief, because belief is actually the enemy of knowing. And so you know it, and everything that you told me today, you knew and know. So it's like I state that I know this because my superconscious wisdom, my higher self, my connection to the divine is literally telling me this, and it's up to me to act on it. Mm-hmm. So yes, I agree 100%. You create your reality with your thoughts, and it just takes us to investigate that both consciously and through action to recognize that it's real.
Yeah. I see it also as a connection with the spirit baby, kind of the energy. There's an energy. 100%. I do feel there's a communication. I've seen, I've heard crazy stories of synchronicities that happen once people are open to it or ask for that guidance and that communication.
Like that. And
so I don't feel like it's just this isolated, like I just want it, therefore I'm going to get it. I feel like there's something even higher than that, where they're almost
I'll say this, you can't, like a lot of people in the call it new age think that if they just wish it into existence, it's going to happen. You have to take action. Mm-hmm. At this level of reality, you can't think it into reality. You have to actually think it, see it, perceptually visualize it, understand it, and then take action to achieve it. So I think like at energetic densities, if we call them angelic beings or whatever divine guides or whatever. I think that they have that capability, and that's why they're always constantly helping us, right? Like if you're in this level of reality and you ask for help and you truly intuitively desire it and are asking for the help, I think the help comes. I don't think it's just like they just hand you a shovel, right? Or a bunch of money, but I think that intuitively you will eventually get it. You just have to do the work that is necessary to earn it. And that's how you ultimately will get it. But nothing is out of the realm of possibility. That's how I see things.
And you've helped, kind of going back to, you had mentioned that you've helped a lot of men also with their fertility. Like, what
I've
have you
helped
seen?
thousands. I've literally helped thousands. I have tons
Wow.
of A-list celebrities that I've helped get pregnant. I can't, of course, mention their names, but I've helped a lot of people get pregnant. And again, I have a protocol. It's really simple to increase FSH and LH, which is obviously the most important factors for men. And you have to use HMG and HCG in combination. And you don't need high dosages. Most doctors, whack out people by giving them too high dosages. You just need a microdose, and you just need to stay taking it. And you also have to have the mindset that you already mentioned. You have to honestly think that you're going to get your wife or your significant other or your partner pregnant. And when you do that, and obviously the lifestyle is important too, right? You can't be doing a bunch of bad things and having bad habits, but if you're living the lifestyle that's conducive to being fertile with the right mindset and right with these agents, and again, it's human menopausal gonadotropin and human chorionic gonadotropin together, they will definitely stimulate FSH and LH to get to a point where you will be shooting very, very fertile sperm.
And then as far as, I'm going to go back to the insulin resistance. You were talking about
Sure.
lifestyle choices. What are some of the lifestyle choices if somebody's listening to this and maybe has insulin resistant PCOS or is trying to get to a healthy weight and struggling?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of things to do, but the first thing to do is to change your lifestyle so that you live insulin controlled. And I don't think most people even understand what that means. I've said that to so many people and they're like, Jay, I don't know what the hell that means. So I always say you eat carbohydrates relative to the energetic demand that you have in your life, right? So what does that mean deeper? It means that if you lift weights, you're a quote unquote biohacker, bodybuilder, not a professional or competitive one, but you lift weights 3 or 4 days a week, you can eat more carbohydrates than a person who doesn't. And the reason that is because obviously when you lift weights, you're depleting muscle glycogen, which is the primary fuel source of glucose, the substrate of glucose. And so someone like that who's doing resistance training or bone bearing training, or really any kind of serious athlete who's depleting muscle glycogen, they can eat more carbohydrates than a person who's sedentary. Right. So you really have to understand that. I don't really ever get into like types of eating. But obviously I'm great. I love intermittent fasting. I love alternate day fasting. I love people that reduce their carbohydrate consumption, intelligently. I think metabolic flexibility is the most important tenet of curing insulin resistance. Again, you're fueling your body relative to your energetic demand. And then you can get really, deeper and esoteric. You can obviously hormonally optimize yourself. Most people are walking around with a hormone deficiency. So therapeutic hormones, obviously testosterone, estradiol, progesterone, SDHEA, pregnenolone. There's a lot of things. And then beyond that, you can really get esoteric and use peptides like a GLP peptide, like a GLP-3, which is retatrutide. It improves insulin signaling and nutrient partitioning. It bumps your metabolic rate slightly. So combined with hormones, combined with living insulin controlled, combined with doing weight training and doing cardiovascular training, you could then, if you really want to get deeper down the rabbit hole, you can start using mitochondrial optimizing peptides like a MOTS-C, like a 5-amino, like an SS31. There are others. But that's kind of really the way, at the really bleeding edge, tip of the spear way to, improve insulin resistance, lower metabolic dysregulation, lower cellular inflammation. That's kind of those are the real ultimate, paths from the base to the higher end.
So from all the different GLPs, 1, 2, and 3, you had mentioned 1 is kind of like not as great. Would you say 3 is the best, or
It really
is there a
depends.
best? Or?
So it's a good question. I think it depends on how metabolically dysregulated you are. And what I mean by that is if you are dealing with food addiction, Again, the hyperpalatability of food is screwing with your brain, and you have just insatiable appetite. You probably need a GLP-2 like a tirzepatide. There are others, cagrilintide, something that will help suppress your appetite, because retatrutide, the GLP-3, is increasing everything else. And so you really want to have something with mild appetite suppression that will help you not overeat. But most people who don't have that, addiction to food or that cravings to food, who are not overeating, they can just get by with a microdose of a GLP-3, and that's going to help them do everything else. And you already said it. I mean, as long as you're exercising, you're doing a combination of lifting weights and doing a combination of cardiovascular training. You don't need much. You have to do it effectively. That's a whole nother thing. I see the majority of people that go to the gym and lift weights have no idea what they're doing, right? They don't train to positive muscle failure. They don't train to an intensity where they actually get results. They just kind of go through the motions, or just their form sucks. They're using ego or momentum. I mean, you see this equally in men and women. Actually, women know how to train better than most men. I mean, because they follow instructions a lot better than men do. And, men will just like see a big, strong, muscular dude and be like, oh, I'm going to do what that guy's going to do, and then just use a bunch of jerking ego momentum and not have any idea what they're doing. But as long as you train effectively, and I always tell people, like, training effectively is not lifting heavy weights. It's literally using your body's natural anatomical levers and physiology to contract muscle fibers at maximum rate. And you don't need heavy weight. You can lift at 50 to 55% of your one repetition maximum, do 20 to 25 reps and do a couple sets. Mm-hmm. And you can still build an amazing physique and build muscle very easily, regardless of your genetics. So it's learning on how to take your body to a specific level of intensity when you train. And then it's the same thing with your cardio. You can't just spin your wheels. You have to go in there, obviously intentional, with an idea that, like, hey man, I really want to do this to help burn body fat, to help me burn calories at rest more effectively. And I think, and the studies show that steady state cardio consistently over time will burn more fat while you're at rest or per unit of rest than actually high intensity cardio. I'm not against high intensity cardio. Right. I think high intensity cardio is good at times, but it's the duration, and it's also the, what would I say? The consistency of cardio, because you can't just do one event of HIT every week and expect to be in condition. Especially when you're going up against people or competing against people who are doing cardio every day.
And actually, too much exercise can also impact the hormones. So it's a good, you want a good medium.
There's no such thing as too much exercise.
There is.
Exercise.
Oh, no, there is.
No. Let me
It'll shut down the hypothalamic.
Too much exercise. 99% of people cannot do too much exercise. But yes, what you're saying is
women
correct.
shut down their periods.
Yeah. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, that's where I was going with this. Like, people that exercise too much have a compulsion. Mm-hmm. But if you walk like 3 times a day uphill for 10 or 15 minutes, that's not too much exercise.
No, 100%.
No, I know we agree on the same thing. I'm just saying that, like, I hear people say I'm overtrained, and I'm like, you wouldn't even know what overtrained was if you got hit with a board in the head. Like, overtrained is what you just said, like people that do ultra endurance stuff. Mm-hmm. And they run 40 miles a day or stupid shit like that, right? Where they do lose their periods. And by the way, all of those people, I've worked with a lot of those people. They've come to me like, I have to correct their life, but many of them have like a compulsion of running or doing it, like you said, overtraining. And so it's like, you have to actually psychologically show them like, hey dude, if you keep doing this, burning through all these calories every day, it's not actually helping you. It's making you worse. But yes, you don't need much. I mean, the average person to lower their body fat, improve their insulin resistance, needs 3 or 4 cardio sessions a week and 2 or 3, 15, 20-minute lifting weight sessions. That's it. Mm-hmm. But again, you have to do them effectively. You really have to do them effectively. And I always tell people, if you don't know what that means, hire a professional coach or trainer that can teach you the movements and teach you the correct form to understand how to do this. Because obviously, most people go through their whole life and never hire a coach or a trainer and just continually do the same thing over and over again and literally get no results and actually physiologically get worse as they age.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great information. And so, for people listening that want to check out your books and want to follow you and get more information, how can they find you?
Yeah. So the primary way to find me is my website, which is jaycampbell.com. I also
Mhm.
have a domain there that for people who watch me on podcasts, they can go to jaycampbell.com/free dash info and they can download a copy of all the books I've written. Right now, there's 8. The ninth one will be up probably in like 60 days once it's out and published. I do give my books away for free all the time because obviously I do know that there are many people who are disadvantaged in third and fourth
Mhm.
and fifth world who can't, economically afford a book purchased on Amazon or purchased wherever. So I always give away my books for free. And then, of course, you can also find me on social media, Jay Campbell 333. And then my company is BioLongevity Labs. .com. And right now, we're probably the second biggest company in the world selling therapeutic peptides and bioregulators and small molecules.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jay. This was a great conversation. We went
Thank you,
into
Michelle.
lots of different topics, but it was all fun. It was all great
Awesome.
stuff.
It definitely was. I really appreciate you having me on.